Quickly, when I say Homewood Suites, in 5 seconds, what's the first thing you think of? Probably a hotel chain with locations practically everywhere. Somewhere that you probably stayed at. But believe it or not too long ago, they had just 35 locations. In today's interview, I had the privilege of interviewing a man who had a huge hand in building the brand Homewood Suites that we all know today. His name is Calvin Stovall. He was the vice president of brand marketing for Hilton Worldwide, tasked with building up Hilton's relatively new brand, Homewood Suites. In this interview, you'll have the chance to get the answer to your long lost question. How do I build a brand? If you stick around long enough, you'll find the answer to your question in this interview. But before we get started, please remember to like and subscribe. Hope you enjoy. Welcome everybody back to another fantastic edition of maxintv. I have an esteemed guest, Calvin Stovall. He founded the Iconic Presentations. Briefly speaking to him beforehand, he really is the man. So I'm really looking forward to speaking with him. He was in the hospitality industry for over 25 years. He was the vice president of brand marketing for Hilton Worldwide. Calvin, thank you so much for joining the show.
Hey, Max, thank you for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'm even more excited to have the pleasure of interviewing such an esteemed person.
Oh, man, please.
Yeah, there you go.
Please, no, come on, man. No, come on.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, you can compliment me. That's totally fine. I accept all the compliment. I'm all good. It's all good. So it seems like your whole purpose in life is about customer and employee experience. That's like what you're passionate about. Why don't you give me a little bit of a background on how you got into this field to begin with?
Oh, man. Wow. Like, as you mentioned, Max, I've been in the industry it's probably closer to 30 years now. And I started actually as a desk clerk. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, and my first hotel job. Yes. Okay. I remember you saying you're from Skokie. So my first job was actually at a Holiday Inn in downtown Chicago, the Holiday Inn City Center. I was a desk clerk there, and did some other supervisory jobs in the Chicago area. Worked at some other hotels, and eventually ended up going to graduate school and went to Cornell University, which was fantastic.
Cornell. It's pronounced Cornell. It's the highest rank in the Ivy League.
Ooh.
I don't know if we can talk to you anymore. Yeah.
Yes. So after that, I ended up going to work for what was at the time was Promise Companies, which is now Hilton, and went to work as a assistant general manager at one of their corporate properties, which was an Embassy Suites in Memphis, Tennessee, and transitioned into corporate. After that, I was in the research department a couple of years, and then moved into branding with Homewood Suites by Hilton. They only had 35 hotels at the time.
What?
And after those 35 hotels, I had a great team, and we focused on growing that brand. Residence Inn was kind of our major competitor at the time. So we were like going up against Goliath, and but we had great guest satisfaction scores. I mean, we won several J.D. Power and Associate Awards for our customer experience and our product and service and so forth. So we had a great product. But as you know now, Homewood Suites has a ton of properties out there in the marketplace. But really why I branched off into where I'm at now, I just have a strong affinity for brands that are, I like to say, quote unquote, iconic organizations that have been able to sustain and be successful in any environment. But my main purpose is to really help organizations, attain or maintain iconic status. And so I've created this framework, which I'm sure we're going to talk more about. But you're right, I am a huge customer experience advocate and also enthusiast. But I am a huge and even bigger proponent for employees because I do understand that there is no customer experience without a positive employee experience. So Having been on the front lines, worked as a front desk clerk, I know how important that face-to-face experience is for the guest. So having been in both ends from the line level experience all the way to corporate, I understand how those things connect, and so I focus on making sure people and leaders understand that you have to have an inspired and engaged team to be successful. So I spend a considerable amount of my time and things that I do in my efforts to make sure that that communication comes across.
I'm actually really surprised you never ended up working for Southwest Airlines, because I think they're like, they were really, really into that. As far as, if you treat the employee right, the employee will treat the client or customers right. And Absolutely. It goes on from there, right? Is that kind of the motto?
Yes, it is. And so, most of my, I do keynote speaking most of the time. That's the majority of my business. Of course, most of it's been virtual now. But, even in training sessions, I try to talk about customer experience from a higher level. First of all, why it's even important and the impact that it can have on your organization. Because I think sometimes people, sometimes it's difficult to put a number against it. But people, there's tons of research out there that demonstrates people that focus on customer experience and employee experience will definitely have a higher ROI and more profitable. So you can have all of the best product, you can have the best things that you make in the world, but without passionate and engaged people to deliver that experience that your brand has put out there in the marketplace, it's all for nothing. It just doesn't work without having people that are behind your mission, charged up about your mission, and can rally around your vision. It just doesn't work. So I just really try to get people to understand that you have to spend the time and make sure your people have the tools and resources and support from you as a leader to make sure everything clicks. And that's just where my heart is at, and I just love doing it all the time.
Definitely. And I would definitely love to touch on that more later when we're going to be talking about your company that you're involved with now, Iconic Presentations. Just to move further in the show, I wanted to ask you about your experience as a vice president of brand marketing for Hilton. So what were your responsibilities? How was your experience overall? And why don't you tell us a little bit of background with that?
As I mentioned before, after graduate school, I went in on the property level and then transitioned into corporate, and I loved Homewood Suites. For those of you that don't know Homewood Suites, which probably most people do, it was the up and coming extended stay brand for Hilton at the time. But again, as I mentioned before, we had a phenomenal product. We were being led at the time. My manager, or my VP, his name is Jim Holthauser, and we all had this great vision for Homewood Suites. We knew it was a great product. It had a great brand, but we needed to get more distribution. As I mentioned before, Residence Inn had probably 4 to 5 times more properties out there in the marketplace. So what we really needed to do was try to really grow our footprint. So a lot of the things that I was responsible for as the brand marketing VP was, of course, getting the brand name out there, letting people know, people continuing to stay with us, but also really focused on the experience that our employees were delivering at the hotels. So a lot of we had a lot of communication, a lot of things that when hotels were successful, like when we hit the 50 hotel mark, 75, 100, huge celebrations and things of that nature, we really focused on making sure employees knew how important they were to that experience. But also another part of my role was to make sure that we shared the information with developers. And so I spent a lot of time with my manager. We would go out and do these road shows in front of a lot of development people to let them understand and see what Homewood Suites was all about. And by the time I left to move on into my entrepreneurial venture, Homewood Suites, we had probably another 100 or so properties in the ground and more coming, online later, because really that product was so well developed and done. And what we had to do was create a smaller footprint, because we did know that, because they were all suites. And a lot of the developers were looking for properties that had that extended stay. For those of you that know, it's more efficient to have a longer term guest than it is, because it's not as much churn and in those rooms. So the investment was great for somebody trying to get into this extended stay space. So once developers caught on to what we were really doing with the experience with the guest, the ROI that they were able to receive, and where the brand was going, it just took off. And and now I don't know how many properties they have, but I'm sure they're up into several hundreds at this point. But people that continue to work with that brand, they walked into a great situation because of it was a lot of work that went into really defining what that brand was. The employees that they were hiring, had the right spirit, making sure that the experience was consistent and things of that nature. So I love that experience working for Homewood, because it was a new brand still. Even though we only had like 35, 40 hotels, we really were, it was great to build it. You know what I mean? And I love building things. And that's where the excitement came with Homewood. I'm just excited to see where they are today. It's just fabulous.
That's crazy, because when I think of Homewood Suites, I think of it as a big brand, right? I think of, you can literally stay there anywhere almost.
Now, yeah.
It seems like you played a huge role into building it out, essentially.
Yeah.
I started it pretty much in the beginning.
Yeah, it was great to be, of course I had great people working with me. It wasn't, we had some great brains on that brand. Jim was a phenomenal leader, and just had great vision for where we were going. And I worked with another lady named Monica Gaston, who was also instrumental in helping grow that brand as well. It was just a lot of people involved, and it's just a lot of affinity for that brand because it was kind of up and coming. And I was just excited, just still excited when I talk about it, because it was just a great experience to have. And, in my line of experience, I wouldn't change that for the world. It was great.
Well, what do you think, what was like the number one key thing? Was it mainly about keeping everyone essentially in the loop and having everyone understand and buy into the brand, what we're trying to accomplish, that people on the ground floor knew what even the developers were doing, the developers knew people on the ground floor? Was that really the main thing that really drove this growth?
I think so. I really, I think essentially you have to, I think to grow anything, something like that, you have to have the basics. I mean, you have to have a good product. You have to have great service to even get, as I like to say, tickets to the ball game to even be considered. But I think what really drove the growth of that brand was the vision. And the vision was it was big, because we talked about being a big brand all the time. And I just truly believe people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And so once you were bought into what the brand was about and the vision and where we were trying to go, you couldn't help but hang on and go for the ride. And we had such great tools and resources in place to do it. And because our leadership was just so focused on making sure things were in place so people could be successful. And so I think that's really what drove that brand's success. And we just was consistent in what we did. I mean, we communicated with the line level employees all the time, all the programs. We did like weekend rate programs. I mean, it was just some of the stuff was so fresh. And I think also the leadership that was running the brand was, I would call them kind of innovative. They would allow me to come up with like programs that was quite different. And did all of them stick? No. But the ones that did and people embraced, it just helped the brand be that more successful, because we were trying to do things that were different than the others. And I just appreciated the leadership allowing me to be creative and do some different things with Homewood.
Right. And the difference between leadership and like a leader and a manager is, right? A manager, you tell what to do and he just does it. A leader, people follow them. They essentially,
yes.
It sounded like they gave you the reins to actually be a leader, essentially. And that is what kind of drove this growth. Unfortunately, a lot of companies, they don't understand that if you just, put everyone on the ball and chain, that, and just, you can't do anything. Like
right.
Nobody can feel that, they feel like they're trapped. They feel that, and you're not going to grow, obviously, because how could you? It sounded like they gave you the reins and you took full advantage of that, and you really built the brand.
Yes, and that's the thing. And I think that you're right. Some leaders are very, if you micromanage your people, they're never going to reach their full potential, because you got to give people autonomy and some room to be creative, particularly if you have a person on your team that you've hired them to do that. So I think you have to have some level of comfort with taking some risk. You want to make sure you stay on strategy, of course, but you got to allow people, you hired them to take your brand to the next level. So if you put the ball and chain on them, you're never going to get there. But if you release it and trust that you've hired them to bring the skills that you wanted to your team, just let them do it. As long as they have, now I'm not going to say I didn't have to do my presentations to my lead, to Jim, to let them see exactly what we were trying to accomplish. And, if I went too far off of the scale, he would say, well, Calvin, let's reel it in a little bit more. Of course I would, but what I appreciated about him and his leadership style was, okay, let's try this weekend partnership and let with this movie company or whatever it was, and let's see what happens. And in most cases, it allowed us to differentiate ourselves from the other extended stay brands that were out there, and it drove business. And so our yield performance was great. Our ADR was continuing to grow. So the numbers were there to prove, weekend rate occupancies were growing, which we were trying to do. And so once you've been successful taking those kind of risks, so you can do more. And I just appreciated the opportunity to be able to do that, because differentiation is everything, particularly now. I mean, it's just so crowded with everybody's kind of saying the same thing. So if you have a team that's creative and help you break out the clutter, you got to give them an opportunity to do it.
Right. When people look at Amazon, right, do you view Amazon as different, or Amazon's like everybody else? They're clearly different, right?
Yeah, clearly different. I actually, it's funny you mentioned that, Max. I did a LinkedIn post probably a couple of weeks ago about Amazon, and it was my quote was, "You're only as good as your customer's last Amazon experience." And my message was there is that, you're being compared to not only your direct competitors, but you're being compared to anyone in your industry and outside that delivers an exceptional experience. So you can't forget that. So you can blame Amazon if your customers are less patient, less tolerable of mediocrity, all of those things. You can thank Amazon, because now Amazon can get you something in 3 hours. If they can do it, they'll do it. And that is just, to me, just phenomenal to be able to do that for a customer. And you have to think about that.
Right. The actual interesting thing is that I actually did work for Amazon at one time, and
cool.
Amazon is actually one of my funnest jobs I've been at. It was very difficult, but we can get into that another time. But I work for Amazon Fresh, and so they say they can deliver your food in 2 hours. Quite frankly, it could be done in 45 minutes if they really wanted to. There's a lot of inefficiencies in their hiring. I can talk about that all day long. It could be there in 45 minutes easily, no problem, no problem. I was there for, let's say, 6 months. They changed the process 7 times to save a quarter of a penny. This is a company. Wow. So, but the point I was trying to make was that Amazon actually has, I read 2 books about Amazon. I worked for Amazon. I sold on Amazon. One of the things that was mentioned in this book, I forget his name, the author, but I learned that Amazon actually has a team, and their whole job is to think of ways to destroy Amazon. Literally.
Wow.
They come out with different, Jeff Bezos literally is like, I want you to think of a way to destroy Amazon. And so what they do is, whenever they come up with a way, like, I think we can do this better and it will hurt Amazon. That's how Amazon stays 14 steps ahead of everyone, because they're essentially thinking of different ways on their own. And so when you mention that, let your innovative people innovate, that's what happens. 3M, that company, the company makes that's how they do it. When someone comes up with a good idea, they give them their own division. Here's resources. Make of it what you think you can make of it. And that's how. So when you're talking about that, that's how you build a brand. And clearly, you made it work. You've seen it firsthand. And I see a lot of similarities between other really successful companies.
Wow, Max, that's great. And to know that they want to disrupt, they focus on disrupting themselves.
Essentially, yes.
That's phenomenal. I mean, you hear some of the other things about Jeff Bezos, with having the chair, one empty chair in the meetings, some of the things like that. And
Yeah.
but that what you just said is huge, because I tell, in my keynotes, I say, look, I think it's important for you to look at your competitors, your direct competitors, what they're doing, but your true inspiration is going to come from somebody out somewhere else that is doing something totally, it may not seem that it can fit within your industry, but that's where you're going to get your inspiration. Look outside of your direct competitors, because somebody is doing something that if you can pull it, you will disrupt your competitors and stand out. And I think that's phenomenal what you just shared. And I think a lot of companies can learn something from doing that. I think that was great. That was great.
I'm glad I actually read a book for a change.
I'm going to use that too. I mean, that story, I just think that's a great example of how you can, first of all, stay ahead, like you say, stay ahead of your competitors, but then also it allows you to stay closer to the customer, and you can stay ahead of what they might want and look for and need. And so you'll be able to offer them something before they even realize they even need it, which is also a great skill to have.
Exactly. I hate to quote Henry Ford, because he's just, Henry Ford, but he did have one good line. He's like, if I just listened to what my customers wanted, I'd give them horse and buggy.
Right.
He didn't know they wanted a car.
Right.
You show it to them.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I love that. And that's a great example. Great example.
Yeah. So it seems though it's like you were literally from the ground up with Homewood Suites. You built it up. Is that real? It seems like your real passion is to build something. Is that what drove your entrepreneurial spirit? Because to start your own business,
yes,
my friend, takes balls of steel. Let's just put it that way.
It does.
So is that what drove that?
Yeah, it is. It is, and I love it. But there's also another passion there too, Max, which is to help others. And I really love helping to inspire others, helping people reach their full potential. So yeah, I love the part of building an organization or a company, but I also love building excitement and enthusiasm and inspiration in others. So that is why I started Iconic Presentations and built the framework and all of that, because I really wanted to try to give people, I like simplicity, man. I don't like things that are just too complex, too complicated to understand. So I wanted to create a framework that was pretty simple for people to understand. And with this framework, once I explain it to people, it can be, applied to a brand, or it can be applied to somebody on a personal basis, because the principles are all very practical, and you can use them, and you can really build something through this framework. But the thing I think that's most important that people understand, it is 4 pieces to it, because it's 4 quadrants, but you have to do them all. You might have to pull one lever more than the other, depending on where you are within your competitive space or whatever. But you can't ignore one quadrant and hope the thing is going to work, because it won't. You have to do it all. If you want to be iconic and you want to continue to stay out here in the marketplace and persevere, you have to do all 4.
Yeah. So how long have you been running your company for so far?
Wow, I had 2, but Iconic Presentations as it is with that name. I did have another organization, but now it's been coming up on 4 years. But I've been speaking for a long time. I mean, I always include my time with Homewood Suites as a speaker, because you are getting on a platform. We always had directors of sales and general managers meetings. So you're getting up and you're talking about your marketing plan, but you're also inspiring people to get behind the vision. So I use that. So I use that as part of my speaking experience, because it is pretty much you're on a platform and you're getting people charged up. So so I've been doing that since about 2005 or before, when I was with Homewood. So I'll say probably since 2002, 3. But as far as Iconic Presentations, it's coming up on 4 years. Yes.
So what is your secret sauce as to? I think one of the hardest things to do is to get people to buy into anything. Right. How do you do it essentially? What is your secret sauce?
I pride myself on customizing my keynotes. So as you know, customer experience and employee experience can apply to pretty much any industry. You have to have it. But I love the hospitality industry because that's my lifeblood. So I focus a lot in that industry. But for some industries where I don't have a background, I mean, I've spoken to a group of CPAs before. I've spoken to a group of anesthesiologists. It just depends on, whatever, message they would like for me to send. But I pride myself on getting to know the customer, and really truly having interviews with not only the leadership of whatever that association or company is. I will talk to people that are actually living it on a day-to-day basis. And what that allows me to do is to craft a keynote or training or whatever it is that they've asked me to do to really get in there. And so the language that I'm using and the challenges that they're dealing with, I can talk to those things. So I'm not really like you would call a typical cookie cutter presenter. And so I learn a lot too that way too as I'm crafting these presentations. But that's my secret sauce. My secret sauce is I'm going to come into your organization and learn how you do business the best I can. Of course, I'm not going to be not nearly as an expert or anything like that, but I will know enough that when I talk and inspire and whatever I share, I'm going to meet your objectives, and hopefully your team will walk away with the, feeling, that the organization has taken the time and brought me in, and I understand the challenges that they're dealing with on a day-to-day.
Yeah, I think you're even downplaying it a bit. I think anyone who had a big piece in building Homewood Suites, I think knows what he's talking about.
I talk about that too. I try to be a little humble and modest.
I know, but that's why you have me. I can build it up a little bit. So
yeah, I've just been fortunate, Max, man. I've been blessed to be able to work with some fantastic people, some fantastic brands, and I just want to, they say, pay it forward a little bit. But I just get excited when I get an opportunity to get on stage and talk, man. I just love doing it.
There we go. And speaking of fortunate, look behind you. Look at that weather. It's freaking 55 degrees and sunny. You can't even buy that weather.
Yeah, it's like 60, 65 degrees here or something like
perfect.
that.
That's perfect.
It's beautiful.
I'm up here chilling my behind up in New Jersey. So, get to see all the smoke come up in the air from all these buildings. So nothing like it. Nothing like it.
It is. I mentioned to you earlier, I'm from Chicago. And a lot of those people, a lot of all my relatives and cousins and family still live there. They're like sending me pictures like, dude, you are so lucky you don't live here right now.
Yep. I remember when I was living in Skokie, my parents who were living in Miami Beach would send me constantly weather reports of Miami Beach, 89 and sunny. And I can't get my car out of the snow.
It's funny, right? It's just crazy how different people in the different areas. I think that's so cool.
I remember my first year trying to get snow off it was a huge snowstorm, Chicago.
Yeah.
And my car was parked. And I remember I was using like a small shovel because that's what I thought all I needed. I'm trying to get all the snow off. Took me a half hour. Everyone walked out there laughing, look at the dumb Miami kid. I come down, one start in 13 seconds and heads off. I'm like, what the,
Yeah, right.
Miami kid doesn't know anything.
Yeah, man. You need big shovels and snow blowers in Chicago. You need big heavy equipment to make it out there, man.
There you go. So you're Chicago tough. You're from Chicago, so are you White Sox fan or Chicago Cubs fan?
Man, I'm still a White Sox fan. Still love my Bulls, and I love my Bears. Hold your applause.
That's how you know you're a real fan.
Yeah, I love it, man. The Bears let me down every year, but I hang in there every year. I always say next year. But yeah, I still love my Chicago team.
I'm a Dolphin fan. I totally know what you mean. At least you have I had no hope ever.
You're with me. Well, you guys did better than us this season.
Listen, it's nice to have one good year every 15,
Yeah. I'm the same way. So we're in the same boat, Max. We're in the same boat.
At least you can say duh Bears. What do you say? Duh Dolphins? Doesn't work.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't work.
Clearly your personality works for you because if you're speaking in front of CPAs, which in my opinion, I think only lawyers tops them as most boring people on God's earth. As far as getting them engaged in anything, is impressive.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. They're a wild bunch. Well, the ones I spoke to anyway were, but they're
Like and I feel like you enthuse. I can't even speak today. I should have an MBA, by the way. I can't speak. I'm kidding. So I think you kind of infuse them with with some energy, so they maybe had some that day.
Yeah, man. You know what? I think that's the same thing. I think with leadership, right? It's the same thing. I think people mirror and they emulate what they see, Max. And I think if if you exude that energy, and that enthusiasm and passion. I'm big on passion, and things like that. And people follow that. They like that, and I know this past year or so, a lot of people, me included, we had some challenges there, but you got to maintain that same energy and passion going forward, particularly if you're in the people business, like probably most of your listeners are and people watching this is, you have to make sure that you maintain that excitement and enthusiasm, because that customer coming in, they have a certain expectation when they come and do business with you, and they don't want to come into an organization or business where it's like this dark gloom, dark cloud, and people are just like all of the energy has been taken out of them and all of that. And I think leadership plays an essential role in making sure that you maintain that. So everywhere I go speak or talk to somebody, I'm like, hey, look, these people, it's valuable. Time is money, Max. You know that. And you have an audience in front of you, man. You have an opportunity to say something. You better say something and do something where people can get something out of it, because time, I just think it's honorable that people give you time to sit there and listen to you, because they don't have to. And so I want to make sure whatever it is I'm bringing, that it's going to add some value to you. And people always ask me this, Max. They ask me this. I get this question all the time. Do you still get nervous when you speak? And I say, hell yes, I do. I get nervous every single time. And it's not the fact that can I get on the platform and say it? My nervousness comes from, am I going to say something that means something to people and that they're going to pull something out of it? That's probably where the nervousness comes from. But just doing it is not really what I'm nervous about.
Yeah, I can't remember which athlete it was, but I think it was like a LeBron James type of like level as far as, do you still get nervous before? But he's like, I get nervous before every single game. How can you get nervous?
Yeah.
He's freaking nervous. It's a regular season game against the Dolphins or something, who cares? Right. But they still feel that. They still get those butterflies.
Yeah, you do. And I never, you know what, Max? I never want to get so comfortable and complacent where I think I got it. You know what I mean? Because that's when you take a hard fall, man. And so, like one of the quadrants of the framework is to be consistent. And when I talk about that, it's the underlying things in that quadrant is about focusing on the things that matter most, and never becoming too comfortable or complacent, because once you that's when you get beat. The Blockbusters of the world, the Tower Records, the Circuit Cities. We could probably go through a list of brands where they probably could probably still be here today if they hadn't gotten too comfortable, if they had taken some risk. And I don't never want to let that happen to me. So I'm going to always be nervous.
There you go.
I'll try to get better,
There you go. I just hope you weren't nervous on this show. It doesn't seem like it, but
I'm always nervous. Well, I think these things I'm not as nervous because it's not it's not rehearsed and really I don't know how many listeners you have. I
think we had a record the other day, 6.5 listen. I'm kidding.
I'm like, what? I know that's not true, Max. I know that's
the second I say Calvin Stovall's on my show, we're gonna get thousands.
Well, I hope so. Just so I can do it, because I know I've been talking about this framework. Let me just get it out really quick and tell them what the 4 quadrants are, and then we can do something more. Okay, the first one is be unique. And that quadrant is all around your differentiating factors, what makes you different, I talk about blue diamond. What is your blue diamond, which can really translate into what is your why kind of deal. And I use blue diamonds because blue diamonds are very rare. I think you can only find them 3 places in the world. I think it's South Africa, Australia, and India, I think are the 3 places. So I like to use blue diamond as a metaphor for your whatever it is that makes you different, talents, gifts, or whatever, that be unique. And then the second quadrant is to be authentic, which is all around connection and connectedness. And so it's not only connecting with your customers and understanding the journey, the customer experience journey, but it's, again, back to connecting with your employees, inspiring them and making sure they have the tools and resources and things so they can be successful. The third quadrant is be passionate. I just believe you can't do anything without passion. Either you have it or you don't. So I talk a lot about being the leader that and like demonstrating passion and making sure that those things bleed into your team and so forth. And then the last one was be consistent, which was the quadrant I mentioned before about not becoming complacent. So I use those quadrants. And as I mentioned before, you can use it in a brand way as for an organization. But lately, when I do, I've been doing some virtual stuff. I've been talking about those quadrants from a personal level. So be unique, be authentic, be passionate, be consistent can also be like from a personal branding standpoint. And you can use those from there as well.
Right, as I think Warren Buffett said it about, well, tying into the passionate part, he says that if you had an opportunity to pick 2 jobs, one job paid a lot more money, you don't necessarily care about it, and then the other job which paid a lot less, but it's a job that you actually want, take that job. And personally, I've done that, and it has worked out smoothly. As I mentioned, I worked for Amazon before, and I remember, I had coming out of college, I had this fancy title with a real estate company does $100 million a year. It was all I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't fun. So I asked someone for, what should I do? She's like, no matter what the position is, just try to get into a company that you want to work for.
Yes.
And it happened to be at the time something that I was really, really like that. I lived and breathed Amazon, I guess. And so I just wanted to work, no matter what, I didn't care what the job was, just wanted to get in. Ever since I took that job, which by the way, paid like $10.50 an hour, like honestly could care less what it paid, right? I was in grad school at the time as well.
Right.
Everything changed.
Wow.
The amount of experience I got from there and just everything kind of changed. And so just from my perspective, fantastic. I mean, it works like a charm.
Yeah, that's a great example too, Max. Life is short, man. And it seems like it's long, but it's not, and I have 2 little boys. They're 11 and 13, Caden and Carson. And I tell them all the time, man, do something that you love. And they're probably like, Dad, man, we're just kids. But I'm like, trust me, when you get older, focus on what gets you excited when you wake up in the mornings. So of course they're right now, Dad, I'm not excited about schoolwork. I'm not gonna do it. But I just think it's important that when we become adults that we focus on something that we love, because that's when you're gonna make the biggest impact, right? And look at that experience you walked away with, Max. I could still see the excitement in your eyes when you talk about Amazon. So it's just something that you can't. That's stuff you can't buy, man. It's nothing worse than working somewhere, waking up every single day, hating it. It's just horrible. Those days are long. They are long.
Yeah. I'm glad. I think we can both say that we both work for yourself, essentially. So, if you don't like it, take it up with the boss.
That's right. You look in the mirror, right? I ain't working for
you. So just ending off from an entrepreneurial standpoint, what has been your biggest challenge? Because you are running your own company, and whenever you run your own company, every company has issues or challenges in general. But when you run your own company, it seems like it's magnified 10 times. What has been your biggest challenge? How were you able to overcome it, essentially?
Wow, man, Max, that's a great question. And I'm gonna just say, I have the same challenges most entrepreneurs have, building customers and all of those things. But I'm gonna say 2020 was probably one of the most challenging years I've had since I've been in business. And I'm speaking for probably most organizations out there. I know I'm not the only one in this boat, but as you know, the meetings industry, events industry, all of the things where I would have an opportunity to speak went away. I mean, it virtually disappeared. So what that meant for me is that I had to kind of reinvent myself if I wanted to continue to stay out here. And so it was a learning experience for me, all of the, just dealing with the virtual and all of that. It was such a learning experience for me, and having to pivot and just do things differently. It stretched me further than I've probably ever been stretched, and a lot of praying, that's for sure. But I just really believe it's although 2020 brought a lot of negatives, I think it also brought a lot of positives, particularly for me. One of the biggest things for me was that I did see how creative and resilient, not just me, but a lot of my colleagues were. A lot of people had to do things differently. But one of the other bigger lessons for me was that I realized that I didn't have as much control as I thought I did. And what I mean by that is that I had to realize that things that happened around me were outside of my control. And so I had to learn to start putting my energy into the things that I could, which was my attitude, the initiatives that I focused on, and things of that nature. So once I realized that, I was pretty good. I mean, I launched a podcast, the Iconic Mindset podcast this year. I did
Please go and subscribe to it, please. Yeah, there we go.
Yes, yeah, the Iconic Mindset. Yes, you can. It's out there on all the podcast platforms. I actually do it with a colleague of mine. His name is John Avola, and they're just, that actually helped me overcome like some of the business that I had lost. I still had a project to focus on, and so I did that and added some things to my website and just really and then another thing that also occurred was, because a lot of people were out of work. You had a lot of people begin to get into speaking and consulting, and because people were trying to survive, so they were coming up with ways to share their expertise as well. So another challenge was, how do you differentiate yourself with so many people out there? And so that was another challenge, to break through the clutter. So that challenge exists for every entrepreneur, even outside of the pandemic and things of that nature. So, it just became that much more difficult. So you just have to persevere. The key is to persevere. And if you're passionate enough about what you're doing, and you're trying to add value to people's lives, you can push through. But man, I just saw so many people trying to control things that were outside of their control, and you just can't. You just have to hang in there and try to continue to be positive. And now I had my bad mornings, like a lot of people, like, man, why am I even continuing to do this stuff?
But then you saw how you look in the mirror, and you're like, damn, I look good.
Max, I like you, man. Oh, yeah. Yes, that's exactly what no, I didn't. But honestly, you do have to just really say, hey, man, I'm going to hang in here, and I know I have something valuable to add to the society, and I'm just going to keep going.
That's a really valuable lesson. Just, if you're gonna, I have, clients of mine and just people I know, colleagues of mine as well, that they, when they call me and they're upset about something or whatever, usually it falls down into that realm with it's just something that is out of their control. If you're going to try to control something you can't control, you will drive yourself crazy.
Oh, man. And a lot of people get wrapped up in that, Max. They do it, and they become frustrated. And once you become frustrated and you're stressed out, and then that leads to health issues, all of that. And that is not, you're not going to be your best creative self when you're stressed out like that. It is so difficult. I've been in circumstances like that where you're trying to come up with new ideas, but if you're so stressed, it's just difficult. But once you realize the things you can control versus the things you can't, then you can move forward in a more positive direction.
you become Calvin Stovall, and build brands,
Man.
build really big brands like you see today, Homewood Suites.
Man.
So Calvin, thank you so much for joining the show. I learned a ton for sure. I hope everyone, I'm sure, found it extremely valuable. Multiple pieces of extremely priceless information here. To book Calvin, please reach out. I'll leave a link down below. Obviously, you heard him here. He's a great guy to know. Simply connect with him, speak to him, talk to him, ask him about his mother's meatloaf recipe, which I hear is and also make sure to subscribe to his podcast, Iconic Mindset Podcast. As far as that goes, I really appreciate you coming on, and hope to have you again, maybe.
Man, Max, thank you so much for the opportunity, man. It's been great. It's always a pleasure to meet somebody brilliant. I'm a little envious that you got an opportunity to, you know, I think you're iconic, man. You're iconic, man. And I love that you work for Amazon. I just think that is just fabulous. So thank you for giving me the opportunity, man. It's been a pleasure.
It's really my pleasure to have you. No, absolutely.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.